WDXE.
Well, I did that a little backwards, but that's okay. Hey, I've got Ben Luna in here with me today for Friends and Neighbors with yours truly, and my friend and neighbor today is Mr. Ben Luna. No, not unfamiliar to us here on the radio, that's for sure.
No, it is good to be back.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm
Good
doing
to
very
see
well.
you. Good to see you. You and I have stayed in touch for a long period of time.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been keeping up with you. And you've got a lot on the plate these days.
I do have a lot on the plate, but I like to eat, so
Yeah.
that's I guess it kind of balances out at some point before you start having to get other plates to put stuff on. But I
Yeah.
guess I'm about there, if not already. Some people would say that I got a table full of stuff going on, but
Yeah.
it's all good.
Well, good.
It's all good.
That's
We're
good.
just trucking along.
I'm glad. Well, I was thankful and glad that you agreed to come on with me this morning, and I have looked forward to it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, good deal. Good deal. Well, I don't know how many of I don't know if you've watched some of the programming that I've done here for the Friends and Neighbors Hour, but I've tried to get the background of folks, some of their family history and that kind of thing as part of what we do. And I want to talk beyond that with you because you've got a lot of business interest. You've got and of course, I've known you, I guess, since your high school days and maybe before.
Yeah.
Of course, you and Missy, my daughter, were in class together.
Yeah, graduated together.
Graduated together. So I knew you especially during your high school years, as Missy was in school with you and that kind of thing. And of course, you were a part of the radio station here during high school. When did you start?
I started, so I had two starts in radio. A lot of people don't know, I actually got my start on the Ronnie Allen show on WDXE.
Okay,
so
I don't know that I knew that.
on this very station.
Yeah.
In the fall of 2000.
Okay.
And I worked with Ronnie for about a month, training and learning. And then I played commercials during Atlanta Braves baseball games.
Okay. Okay. Because they have to have somebody to man the station during the baseball games.
Yeah, back then you had to manually do it.
Yeah.
And so I did that through that. The rest of the winter, in the wintertime, we didn't have any baseball games, but I did other ball games and stuff like that around the station, just kind of learning. And Roger had a position that had opened on the weekends at WLX.
Okay.
And I applied for it, and I got that position and came up, and I started, and by this time I turned 15.
Yeah.
And so I really, really got started at WLX in 2001.
You were just a kid.
I was 50, yeah.
Just a kid, man.
I was a freshman in high school. That was the end of my freshman year.
Yeah.
And from there, the rest is history. Yeah. I started reading weekend news or trying to read weekend news.
Yeah.
And the obituaries were something else.
I bet.
Yeah. And I gave it my best shot, and I like to think that I did a good job for Roger.
Yeah.
And one day I got asked, "Would you like to fill in for Eddie? He's off."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, you want me to do that?" I was like, okay. And nothing burned down.
Yeah,
so
you hung in there with it.
Yeah. And then Eddie came back a few days later, and he said, "Hey, Luna." I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Landrew." He said, "Don't ever call me that again." I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. I mean Eddie." Yes, sir. And he said, "Don't even call me sir. That's weird." But he said, "You're in this weather thing. You really like weather." I said, "Well, I want to be a meteorologist when I grow up."
Yeah.
And he laughed and he said, "Well, why don't you start recording the weather for my morning show?
Yeah.
And I'll play it."
Yeah.
And
so there it was born.
Yep.
So the weatherman was born.
That was it.
That's awesome. Well, of course, we've kept up with you and knew that, at least from the listener perspective. We knew, how it was happening, that kind of thing. So really cool. And, of course, I remember us talking about you being that high school boy that was on the radio station up there at WLX. So you did good. You did really good. Well, I want to go backwards.
Okay.
You. I want you to tell me about your family. As far back as you want to tell me how Ben Luna became Ben Luna in this world.
Well,
and of course, I know a lot of folks know your family, your mom and your grandmother.
Oh, yeah.
Those kind of your dad. who recently passed away. And I know you miss him. And so give us a little background of Ben Luna and who Ben Luna is.
Well, in the beginning, God created heaven
There
and
you
the
go.
earth.
There you go.
And the earth was without...
Maybe not that far
okay,
back.
Okay. So my aunt did my family history. And I'll make it clear. The other career path, which I always had wanted to be a meteorologist, I always wanted to be in broadcasting.
Yeah.
But I adore history.
Yes.
And there's a part of me that almost made the jump to be a history teacher.
Yeah.
Because I love it. And
Yeah.
so my aunt did my family genealogy on the Luna side.
Oh, really? Okay.
And she took it all the way back to England when the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And our great times 50 or however many back, uncle was the author of Amazing Grace.
No kidding.
Newton. I
Really?
forgot his first name. But anyway, we're related to the Newtons. Well, the Lunas came over. They were Irish. And the family patriarch, and I, for the life of me, cannot. I've got all this written down in a book at home.
Yeah.
They were O'Lunny. O''Lunny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people pronounced it O'Looney. O'Lunny was his name.
Okay.
And he came to the United States during the colonial period.
Yeah.
And he fought in the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
And the federal government at the time was broke.
Yeah.
And so what they did for revolutionary soldiers, and this practice continued for some time, they gave him a land grant.
Okay.
And they said, so we've either won in battle or purchased all of this land from the Indians, and because of your service, and you lived, we're going to give you 50 acres.
Yeah.
Or 100 acres or whatever.
Whatever it was.
In this part of the unknown territory, there will be limited resources, but you can develop whatever you want to there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for your service. Well, his land grant was southern Marshall County into northern Lincoln County.
Really?
In the area of Petersburg.
Okay.
Well,
Know where that is?
So when he moved to, I believe he made the first jaunt of his journey, brought him to Murfreesboro, and that's where he said, I am tired of writing his long name.
Yeah.
So he shortened it
He shortened it.
to Luna.
How about that? You know, a lot of those folks kind of shortened or changed their name.
So when he settled, he got married, and they had 50 kids, it seems like. There were several of them.
Yeah.
And so the point I'm getting at, all the Lunas in southern Middle Tennessee, that's where they came from.
Okay.
And so if you run across a Luna in this area, then they're all related back to that man and his, I believe he had 13 or 14 children.
Wow. Okay.
Because, well, that's what you
Yeah.
You did that because you had to have farm help.
Yeah.
And that's how you survived. And so that's what he did. And they started migrating west, and there were some that moved up to Lewisburg. There were some that moved into Murray County. There were some that moved to Giles, Lawrence, Wayne, and then I think as far as the Tennessee River in Hardin.
Really? Okay. How
And
about
so that was the initial
That's
migration.
interesting. That's interesting. How
So,
about that?
so I told you I could go far back.
Now, what about your mom? Her family.
The Bowdens. So my late grandfather was Junior Bowden.
Yeah.
My grandmother, who's still
Yes.
rocking and rolling, she's
Yeah.
almost
What a sweetie.
91.
What a sweetheart.
I purposely coughed to cover up the fact that I said her age on the radio and live streaming.
Don't do that.
She can still switch me. Sarah Bowden.
Yeah.
She and my grandfather, of course, they were both from here, and my grandmother was a Pitts. And before that, my great grandmother was part of the Becks, so we are part Beck as well. Mm-hmm. And they, I believe they married in 51.
Yeah.
And my mom came along in 57.
Yeah.
And just had a birthday.
Yeah.
And so my parents got married in 81, and I popped out around February of 86.
Yeah. You and Missy are really close to the same age.
We are out of high school 20 years this year.
Isn't that amazing?
20 years.
Gosh, 20 years. Mm-hmm. Well, y'all are doing well.
Well,
doing well.
What's
Quite proud of you.
Thank you.
My memory of you, one of my biggest memories of you was the graduation night party.
Uh-huh.
And I was one of the parental hosts
Yeah.
of that party. And they had a ring set up, like a boxing ring of some
I
sort.
remember that thing.
And
yes.
you guys were clubbing each other with these big padded sticks.
Uh-huh.
And you were in the fifth throw of it. You were among it big time.
Oh, I was having fun.
You were having fun, and y'all were just beating the daylights out of each other.
I left, and I didn't know that the after graduation party was you don't leave.
That's true.
And I did.
I didn't know you left.
I did. I left, and because I told Teresa Betts was the other parent watching over us.
Yes, I remember.
And I went to her and I said, I've got to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
I've got to be at work at 9:00. I cannot stay out all night.
Yeah.
And by this time it was about 2:30 or 3, and she said, "You call me on your cell phone when you get home." And so I used my flip phone.
Yeah.
And I called her, and my mom said
I
he's
remember
at
being
home.
you talking about this
Yeah.
now that you said that.
But yeah, and what a lot of people don't know, so I am a United Methodist pastor.
Yep.
I pastor Fall River and Pleasant Ridge churches.
Yeah.
Fall River is in Fall River, and Pleasant Ridge is in Giles County and Good Spring.
Yep.
We meet at 9 and 10:30 every Sunday morning, so
Yeah.
y'all make the journey over. But I have been in the ministry program since I was in high school.
Oh, okay. I knew that you had a ministry interest, but I didn't know the history of it.
Well, so the morning after our graduation, my mom, I remember the phone ringing, and my mom came and woke me up.
Yeah.
And she said, the district superintendent in the Methodist Church, we have pastors and then DSs and then a bishop.
Right.
And the DS, she said, wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
And I thought, uh-oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
And I woke up real quick.
Yeah.
And I got on the phone, and I thought maybe they're just calling to say, happy graduation, which
Yeah.
is...
You did it. Yeah.
But the phone call was, you're starting Martin in the fall. And initially that was the plan. I was going to Martin Methodist College. And I said, yes. And they said, well, what do you think about pastoring a church while you're over there? And
Really?
yes. So I was offered my first church the day after high school graduation. And ultimately I opted not to take it, just because going in as a freshman and then carrying the load of being a pastor too.
That's a lot on
And
it.
so
That's a
that
lot
was-
on someone who's
And it was
18, 19 years old.
It was not a big church
Yeah.
at all. It was a very, very small church, and probably could have managed it well in hindsight. But that was the way that, I guess, being full adulthood, you get kicking the pants at some point, and it's like, all right, buddy, get to work. You got stuff to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you went to Martin Methodist.
I did. College was interesting. I went to Martin, and then I did a semester. Well, I did a full year at Columbia State.
Yeah.
And then I did Martin.
Yeah.
I did not finish at Martin. Mississippi State had started a program called the BMP.
Yes.
Broadcast Meteorology Program, and you could do that two ways. You could move down there to Starkville and go on campus,
Yeah.
or you could do it by this brand new internet-based classroom portal.
Oh, really?
And back, 20 years ago,
That was a big deal. That was
a
new.
very big deal. So I filled out my my paperwork, and part of it, and we were talking about this at the office the other day, because a friend of mine is doing this in the very modern way that it's done, which is exactly what you would expect a modern online class to be.
Yeah.
Back then, you submitted your work online. They mailed you DVDs of your classes.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the way you did it. So I've got a whole stack of DVDs in a box somewhere from Mississippi State. I could probably sell those on eBay.
Yeah.
But that was a 2-year-long program, and I did that, which the same classes that you would take in meteorology if you were on campus.
Right.
No difference. Same work, same everything. And then I did a Penn State program, and then along the way I did a couple other educational things for meteorology. There was one associated with Harvard that I did, and and then I have coming up this year, I will start what's called the Pastoral Course of Study, which is a 10-year-long program.
Yeah.
That when you're finished, if you live through it, you basically have an equivalency of a Master of Divinity.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Busy man.
So,
Staying busy. On top of trying to make a living, all this.
on top of trying to make a living.
Trying to make a living and all that. So, well, good for you, man. Good for you. Well, I have known, of course, of your interest in the weather and all of that through the radio and all that we've kept up with from a public point of view. But I don't think I realized that you actually had the education credentials to go behind it. So it took a while. Yeah. Now, at some point, and I don't remember exactly when this was, but you ended up, did you become a meteorologist? So you did do that.
Yeah, after the Mississippi State thing.
That's right. Okay. So then how did the Huntsville thing happen? You knew I was going to ask you about that.
No, I didn't. So Huntsville.
Because for those of you that may not know, Ben did some weather.
I did.
For one of the TV stations in Huntsville.
I did.
And for those of us in this neck of the woods, a lot of us turned to Huntsville for our weather, not necessarily Nashville. And so Huntsville was like, okay, we're going to watch Huntsville weather.
Yeah.
That was the thing. And there all of a sudden was Ben Luna.
I know. Well, and I will tell you this, the one person who got behind me and who gave me the opportunity, the resources, the knowledge, who taught me everything he knew was Roger Wright. And I owe Roger a very, very, very great deal.
Yes.
Of everything that I am today.
Yeah.
And he is not paying me to say that. Although he might pop in the door any minute and either give me a 20 or throw me out, one of the two.
One of the two.
But I do love and respect Roger tremendously.
You've got a long-time relationship with Roger. He took you under his wing when you were a boy, basically.
He did. So a good, dear, long-time friend of mine, and a lot of this is kind of church-related because he was a Nazarene. Yeah. And Nazarene and Methodists are related in the Wesleyan tradition, is Spencer Denton. And Spencer was at 19 in Huntsville, took a break, went into insurance.
Okay.
And did very well selling insurance. Missed weather, missed doing television.
Yeah.
Said, I'm getting back in. 31 had a chief position open, and so he became the chief at 31.
Okay.
Well, I reached out to Spencer and I said, hey, because they were rebuilding their whole staff. This was after April 27th of 2011.
Yeah.
A lot of people left Alabama because of the destruction.
Yes.
And 31 was having to rebuild its staff. And I emailed Spencer and I said, hey, congratulations on being chief. If you need someone to fill in while you're, trying to find some permanent people to move in to do this, I'm an hour down the road.
Yeah.
Well, he called me and he said, hey, I think this actually could be a long-term deal. What do you think about taking on weekends?
Yeah.
Permanent.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, that's seriously?
Yeah. You're like,
or really?
So this long-time goal of yours was beginning to open up.
And I wound up doing it, and still working at the radio station.
Right. Right.
And I would go down, and their weekends were different. At 31, their weekends were Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
Well, I earned another position. They made me not only weekend meteorologist, I was the first weather content producer. Okay. And that gave me a weekly part-time job. And I would produce content for the weather team, basically Spencer and the morning guy, which was Gary Dobbs.
Right.
To have, hey, by the way, today's the third lunar eclipse of the year, or the third full moon of the year.
Right.
And here's a little wives' tale that goes with it. Just fun, factual stuff.
Right.
And they had never had somebody to do that before.
Right.
And that was good. But, and then they hired Mary. And so Mary Perry came on board.
Yeah.
Mary was from Georgia, and she was going to be Gary's fill-in when Gary got sick.
Yeah.
Because she lived 10 minutes from the TV station. Mary had graduated from Georgia with a degree in atmospheric science and loved her to death. Fantastic girl. She's the chief now in Colorado Springs. But Mary and I and Spencer and Gary made up the 31 weather team.
Okay.
Well, one day, and a lot of people don't know this part of the story, Dan Satterfield, and
Yes.
when I say Satterfield, everybody, remembers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dan.
He made a name for himself.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. And Dan legitimately cared about Southern Middle Tennessee.
He did. That's true.
And that is his, you can say what you want.
Yeah.
But you say what you want because you watched him.
Yeah.
Because he was on, because he cared about here.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Okay. He had left 19.
Okay.
That was history. And he didn't have anything to do. He was going to, I think, look at maybe doing an early retirement, which he had been successful enough that he could.
Yeah.
He lived on the mountain, Montesano, down there.
Yeah.
And his retirement, quote unquote, was short-lived. I got a phone call from Spencer one day, and he said, "Hey, I need you in Huntsville Thursday afternoon at 2:00 at the little photography place in downtown Huntsville that we went to have our headshots and team pictures made."
Your media pictures.
Yes. I said, "Okay, we just did those. Well, we got to do them again." "Okay. Why?" "Well, we've hired somebody." I said, "Okay, who?" "I'm not going to tell you. It's a surprise." And this was Monday.
Okay.
And I said, "Don't you do this to me." He said, "No, it's a surprise. Talk to you later. Bye." Click.
Oh, heck.
I thought, "I'll get you back, old buddy." And I'm still going to pay him back for that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Thursday afternoon, I roll into Gil Brady Studios in Huntsville and get out of the car, walk up the steps, met Spencer on the front porch. And the studio was in an old house, beautiful. It was in Five Points. And he said, "Are you ready to meet your new team member?" And I said, "I've been ready since you told me about this Monday."
Yeah, yeah.
"Who is it?" And I walk in and walk around the corner, and Dan Satterfield extends his hand and says, "Ben, it's good to see you again." I'd met Dan years before.
Yeah.
And I said, Dan
Satterfield.
Satterfield.
Yeah. How about that?
And I look at Spencer, and he's just ear to ear. What Dan was going to do, and this was his transition to retirement,
Yeah.
was he was going to come in and do the 4:00 newscast at
Yeah.
31.
Yeah.
And then he was going to be Spencer's right-hand man in severe weather.
Okay.
And Dan could basically walk to the TV station. In fact, he did.
Yeah.
Part of his exercise, he would walk back and forth. But anyway, so he goes, and we line up and we take a picture. And and there's a hard drive in this building that has that picture on it.
Really?
And I would love nothing more than to find that thing. So I stood there, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. And Spencer is in the middle. I'm to the right of Spencer. The other side is Mary Perry.
Yeah.
And then seated, it's Dobbs and Satterfield. And I thought, Lord, I'm a kid from Lawrenceburg, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I'm now 1/5 of this weather team that consists of Dobbs, Denton, and Satterfield.
And you're doing a dream thing, man.
And
For you, that was a dream come true, buddy.
It was. And ultimately, Dan did not get to come to 31. His non-compete in legal stuff with how his exit at 19 happened, he basically said, I'm not going to deal with this. And he had been offered a full-time job in Salisbury, Maryland.
Really?
And to this day, that's where Dan is.
I was going to ask you. I knew he went off.
Yes.
And basically left the state,
Yeah.
but I didn't know where. So he's in Maryland.
He's in Maryland, doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Has a wonderful reputation there.
Yeah.
And has done very, very well. And the reason why that happened was the same guy that brought him to 19 had left and gone up there.
Oh, okay.
And that's just outside of Washington.
Okay.
Is where that's at.
Yeah.
And so it's a bigger market.
Yeah.
And that guy that hired him at 19 called and said, hey, come up north.
Come with me.
Come with me.
How about that? That made it easy for him.
Yeah.
Probably so.
But I worked at 31 from 2011 through the end of 13. So I was there for about 3 years.
Awesome.
And came back here when Roger, which I'd never left the radio station, but Roger called me one day and he said, hey, got the opportunity of buying the other radio stations.
Yes.
DXE and KSR.
Yes.
And I'm going to need you 110%.
Yeah.
In radio. And I said, okay.
Yeah. Well, I remember those days. Roger and I talked. Of course, I was at DXC at that time when the transition happened. And Roger and I talked a little bit, and he graciously allowed me to stay here and keep doing what I was doing. And so we've been buds ever since. And of course, knowing you, and it wasn't a hard transition for me to be able to do that. So it was fun. It's been fun ever since. And of course, you have gone on to greater adventures, I guess. Well, you're still kind of married to the station because you supply the weather here and all that. You're married to all the stations here. Still have a relationship with all the radio stations here. But you guys built a new studio for the Tennessee Valley Weather Center. The Tennessee Valley Weather Center started here.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
It started here.
We had, at the end of 19, played with the idea of what if we got into doing some video streaming stuff,
Yeah.
specifically for weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had done a couple of events for sports, and it went well, and the technology had become much more, acceptable, much more easier to navigate.
Right.
By 2019, and had those discussions. On February 5th of 2020, we had an unwarned EF1 tornado that came through Lawrenceburg. That was the day that the library roof was peeled off like a sardine can.
Yep.
And all those homes through Admiral Circle, Parks and Caperton, Lafayette, back through around E.O. Kaufman, and then there were homes in New Prospect, and then back out in
Now, what I
county.
remember this, but when did you? I remember it, but when did you say it was?
February 5th of 2020.
2020. Okay. Yeah.
Simultaneously, this was a line of storms. And if you can just picture this big line that runs the distance of Lawrence County, we had what's called a quick spin tornado. And those type of tornadoes are usually roof getters. They're lower end and they can still be fatal.
Yes.
But they quickly spin up, drop, wash out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Loretto got hit at the same time.
Okay.
So there was one northwest or northeast of Loretto that touched down and moved Keener. I think that was Keener. Anyway, down between Loretto and Leoma. There was one.
Yeah.
And then the next week, that was a Wednesday. The next Wednesday was the storm that got the Loretto baseball park again.
Okay.
So, okay, we're in February. We've had 2 weeks, 2 consecutive days or Wednesdays of tornadoes.
Yes.
National Weather Service did not warn them, not at their fault.
Yeah.
It was not the National Weather Service's fault that the button was not pushed. It was because they were not detected.
Yeah.
Okay. The only way you can detect them is with a radar.
Yeah.
So Roger looked at me that next Wednesday and he said, go make it happen.
Yeah.
And Roger put in a lot of his personal money
Yeah.
into getting that ball that's on that tower out front of the radio station. And we got some money from the state. And now COVID had hit and
Right.
things were shutting down. So Clay Doggett came through with $200,000. And a lot of people said that couldn't be done, but Clay pulled it off. And to this day, I am grateful. Clay and Joey Hensley, Dr. Hensley,
Yeah.
that was our representation at the time.
Sure.
And
So they pull the strings at the state.
yeah,
basically.
they got some state money for 200, and Roger put in a lot of money. And then we got some donations from local businesses and industry, and so now we're able to buy a radar that fills the gap.
Okay.
And that data is still publicly shared with the National Weather Service. That has been in operation since May of 2020.
Okay.
So
So from February to May, it happened.
it happened.
How about that?
Well, wedged in the middle. I went to Pulaski on my fundraising journey,
yeah.
and I had a gentleman who looked at me and he said, I'll tell you what, I'll fund you radar. I'll give you some money for it, but I want to see you use it.
Yeah.
And yeah. I'll live stream us using, the data. He said, no. I want to see you use it like a TV station. I want to set it at my house, and I want to watch it on my big screen until I have to go to my basement.
Yes. Well, that was a tall order.
That was a tall order, and all right. Steve Spivey is who did that.
I know Steve Spivey.
So Steve Spivey was the one that gave the challenge.
Really?
And April 12th of 2020, we had a high risk for severe weather over North Alabama that skimmed southern Tennessee. But even in those instances, if the bullseye is in Birmingham,
Yes.
you got to be watching in Lawrenceburg because you're close enough in the world of meteorology that, sometimes things might go astray. And, we see that from time to time. But anyway, Tennessee Valley Weather was born on April 12th of 2020.
Okay.
And we got the radar in May, and then we took about 2 months to calibrate the thing, because if you want to prevent any form of severe weather for at least 6 months, build a radar. I didn't have anything to calibrate that thing to.
Really?
No, I was hitting a water tank on the north side of town by Walmart to position it and just kind of figure out, what all it could do. And we finally got some weather in August and September,
Okay.
and kind of really brought it back down, did some refining on it, and then she's good to go. And it's been going ever since. And to this day, confirmed, we have had 9 tornado warnings issued off of the data from that radar that would otherwise have not been issued for southern Tennessee and northwest Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is doing its job. It is warning people, because now look, at the end of the day, we can hark on social media and every platform that Tennessee Valley Weather's on. Roger's on the radio talking about it. You can watch TV. You can have all the warning in the world. You can have radios and sirens going off. But unless you act,
Yeah.
that's on you. But the fact that people were not being warned because there was no warning issued, and that now has been fixed.
Yeah.
And Nashville and Huntsville both are actively using the data from that radar located at this building.
That's awesome. That's a great story because, it has changed the way, it's changed the way that we watch our weather. Especially locally. Of course, we, for many, many years, we either watched Nashville or Huntsville weather. And of course, they got their data, I guess, from their radars, but also from the National Weather Service. Those kind of things. And they did as good a job as I guess you could do with the information they had. But you're right. There was a gap here.
Yes.
There was a gap here. And we had some deadly tornadoes that
Yes, we did.
that affected our community long before we had this.
Yes.
I remember, I guess it was the F5
April 16th of 98.
of 98 that came through and went through, I guess, was Etheridge.
Yeah.
And that thing still is talked about today.
Yes.
And just in recent weeks, we were watching you at home and hit the basement.
Yeah.
You kept talking about it was coming through Ovilla.
Yeah.
And headed towards center. Well, that is our bowling alley.
That's the hood right
that's
there.
That's the hood is
Yeah.
right there. So you were talking about us specifically, and that's what's neat about this, is that you can pinpoint exactly where everything is. Now, how does that for you when you're at the studio and you're doing that, and I'm sure it's exciting. It's pressure filled. All hands on deck.
It is all hands on deck. It is adrenaline. To be honest with you, I'm praying under my breath the whole time for people in the path of that storm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
We have only had one major violent tornado that rolled through a portion of our viewing area since we've been in operation, and that was in April of last year.
Yeah.
For that, we were up for an Emmy nomination.
Now, where was that one? I remember.
It started just west of Selmer, moved north of Selmer into northern Hardin, tracked through Clifton,
Yep.
and then clipped the southern, just south of Hohenwald, did not go into Lawrence County, but by that time, after it moved south of Hohenwald, it just started to fade out and became a big wind gust, and that was during Mule Day of 23.
Yeah.
Because I was in constant phone calls with Murray EMA because they had all these people in trailers.
Yeah.
And here's this tornado by that time had already killed 11 people.
Yeah.
And I have told this, and I am dead serious as possible. If we have a major event, and we can tell for the most part with the technology that we have at Tennessee Valley Weather, how big this thing is, and we have had it on our camera network. If we have a violent major tornado headed into Lawrence County, I have said for years that I will stop and do the Lord's Prayer before we evacuate our facility and go to our safe place.
Yeah.
And, I hope that never happens on my watch.
Yeah.
But,
Well, the details, watching this weather like you have, and I'll admit something to you. As a younger man, I never really paid that much attention to the weather. Even when there were threatening storms, and I'm talking about years before Tennessee Valley Weather System.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in years past. Yeah, I was, and even during watching the Dan Satterfield days, that because we'd watch him as well as others down there. I was one of those people that never got excited. I was like, they're just, they're grandstanding, they're putting on a show, and they're making it worse than what it really, really is. And I've learned better. I've learned better. These storms need to be taken very seriously.
They do.
And but I was one of those rockheads that were like,
well, if I'm not mistaken, did you not grow up south of town?
I grew up in New Prospect.
Okay, so you're New Prospect.
Yeah,
okay.
I grew up in New Prospect. And evidently we didn't get storms in New Prospect.
Well, the last major tornado that hit Lawrence County, Now, in part of this is the natural cycle of how things are.
Yeah.
With El Nino and La Niñas.
Yes.
We went through, and I looked at the records. There's about a 10-year gap in tornadoes in Lawrence County from the 70s, the late 70s through about 1990.
Really?
The 80s were dead calm.
How about that?
You never hear somebody talk about it here. Now, they were very prevalent in other parts of the state
Yeah.
because Cool Springs is where it is now because of a Christmas Eve tornado in 89, 88 or 89.
Yeah.
And wiped that part of Franklin off the map. And then they rebuilt it and it became the mall. But
Yeah.
at least here,
Yeah.
we didn't have anything.
How about that?
But the 70s,
Weather history.
the 70s were highly active.
Really?
And because I thought, and I knew Roger had kinfolks out there, and I'm sure there's somebody listening or watching this right now when I say this, Horseshoe Bend,
Yes.
the
I
Horseshoe
remember,
Bend tornado.
I remember that being talked about a lot. Yes, the Horseshoe Bend tornado. And I remember, listen, selling real estate.
Yes.
It's still, for years, if there was a house out there that said, no, I don't go out there, tornadoes come through there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's,
You know,
that's where you live now.
Yeah. So, and I did live out there for quite some time after being grown.
Yeah.
We built out there just off of Horseshoe Bend.
Yeah.
And lived there for many years. But hey, I wanted to, there's something else I got to ask you
Sure.
about. Before we don't have a lot more time left.
Yeah.
We got about another 10, 11 minutes,
Yeah.
something like that. And I've been fascinating. My wife has been telling me that she has been hearing some sources about this extreme blast of cold.
Oh, yeah, that.
That's about to hit us. Extreme blast of cold, and then there's others. And then I happened to notice this morning that you had posted this. I think you posted it about how this was all hogwash.
It is.
So tell me,
Okay.
how is anybody able to actually do a long range?
Okay. Here's how this works.
Yeah.
And I compare this, the computer that took astronauts to the moon in the 60s and 70s, the calculator that you never use on your desk is 10 times more powerful than that computer today. So what you carry in your pocket today, your cell phone, your iPhone,
Yeah.
is light years ahead of that. So using today's technology, there are computers that are quite literally almost the size of this building that we're in.
Yeah.
A lot of them are located near Washington. There's one or two out west, and Europe has one, Canada has one, and so forth. And these generate forecast models. There's one in Huntsville, a smaller one in Huntsville. And what they do, they're constantly running calculations based on observed parameters
Yeah.
across the entire planet. And every 6 hours, we get a drop of forecast model data. They're always generating, they're always processing. So we get this information, and through your education and skill and experience, you interpret this data. Now, the best forecast that is typically 95 to 98% accurate is the 48-hour forecast parameter.
Yeah.
So when we go on and we talk about the next 2 or 3 days, our confidence level is high. The 7-day forecast started as the 5-day years ago. Then it became the 7.
Right.
We run a 7-day on Tennessee Valley weather.
Right.
And that's the limit of what we feel comfortable with. The models some of them produce days out, much further out, just to give the forecaster or meteorologist a heads up as to, hey, this particular scenario based on how conditions are right now at this particular time, we could see a big Arctic blast here in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 6 hours later, when those models rerun again, well, it's changed. It's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I don't want to call it a fluke, but you don't ever go on and say, it's comparable to you driving down the road, looking at a piece of property that you think
Yeah.
might come for sale,
Yeah.
and you go ahead and you get a buyer for it and convince that buyer that they're about to buy that piece of property, and then that owner comes out and says, "Nah, I decided not to sell it."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
Well, and now I'm don't take this the wrong way to people. Yes, we are primarily a social media based entity.
Yes.
But we operate what we do very conservatively.
Yeah.
And I lose a lot of, I don't want to say, I would rather have better credibility than 1 million followers.
Yes.
There are people who have 1 million followers because what they do is they go on and they will take the snapshot of that model data that is inaccurate 2 weeks out and put it on social media and say, "Get ready, this is going to be a big, winter Arctic blast."
Yes.
And people will share it, and people get scared. They look at it because they think they're looking at something official,
Yeah.
and it's not.
Yeah. It's unfortunate in the world we live in
Yes.
that there's tremendous amount of information flowing, and not all of it is accurate, true,
And
or,
so
or whatever.
you've got to read. Now, are we observing in other sources that we use the potential for cold weather later this month and into February?
Yeah.
Yes, we have that trend. It's obviously wintertime.
Yeah.
But yes, we are observing the potential for some colder air. Is it going to be 58 below zero in Lawrenceburg? No.
Yeah.
No, that's end of the world. But are we going to be cold
Yeah.
at some point in
Yeah.
late January, February? Yeah,
I'm
probably.
expecting to be cold. Well,
And we'll get some snow, too.
Speaking of that, and I don't want to get over political or any political for that matter, but I can't help but ask you about something because we hear about it all the time. For many, many years, it was global warming, global warming, global warming. Oh my gosh, end of the world, global warming. And then since global warming didn't work out like some of them thought, they changed their terminology to climate change, climate change, climate change.
Yeah.
As if, and I happen to be one of those people who think we really don't do anything about it or can't do anything about it, as if we could, change the world climate. And you, as a meteorologist, I understand that things that we do affect. If you throw a piece of paper out on the ground, it's going to leave litter where you thrown it.
Yeah.
I understand all that. I'm for taking care of our environment, so don't get me wrong on that. But the idea that somehow or another, well, what was it? Al Gore, he missed his prediction by years. The oceans were going to flood us in 10 years, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, this global warming to me has been a hoax. And the climate change alarmist to me.
There will, no matter what you do or what topic you cover, there will always be an opposing side.
Oh,
and
sure.
then there will always be, and I hate to use this term, but it's true, those who are extremists with it that take it to the very, very, very pinnacle of reality.
Yeah.
Now,
And I brought it up late. We don't have a lot of time,
no,
but anyway.
well, I have a short answer for it.
Okay, good.
Don't turn off the radio and don't end the live stream with what I'm about to tell you, because this is the logical, honest to goodness. Ben Luna believes this 110% truth.
Okay.
Is climate change real? To a degree, yes, it is.
Okay.
Because it is scientifically proven with the amount of hydrocarbons that are released into the atmosphere that you are manipulating on a global scale how the planet operates. It is happening. Is it to the degree that extremists have said over the past 30 years? No. Is it an issue that should never have been politicized? You better dang well believe it.
Yeah.
Is it something that it's going to be fixed by every American, having to do this, and this by 2030 or whatever?
Yeah.
No, it's a humanity problem. And until humanity wants to get together and say, hey, let's try to figure out some better solutions to this. And there are better solutions. But because you have a machine, essentially,
Yeah.
of, certain folks that want to make a lot of money off of issues. Well, that's where we are. And there have been others along the way.
It's follow the money deal.
It is follow the money.
Yeah.
And I have seen that firsthand in the past 6 months with some folks that came wanting us to buy into a meteorology-based meteorological service that is funded from climate change money. And when I asked them, I said, where'd y'all get the money to do this? Oh, it's, they're giving grants to them. Oh, well, that's...
Yeah, it's well.
Yeah, but is it something that we need to watch and be careful with? Yes, absolutely. You are careful if you have a nail gun at a construction site. You don't go shooting nails into the air.
Do you remember the ozone hole crisis that they created?
Oh yeah, that's all. When I was in elementary school, that's all we heard.
It was young. Well, yeah, I know it was several years ago.
You don't hear about it anymore.
Don't hear about it anymore because it was. We were going to go through an ice age too. But never did.
Here's the thing, and I'll close with this. COVID, horrible thing.
Right.
Basically shut down the planet for a year, 2 years. You had whales and dolphins in clear water floating or swimming past New York City in the Hudson and East Rivers because of the less pollutants that had gathered, because people weren't doing a lot.
Yeah.
Today, life has resumed.
Yeah.
You don't have that anymore.
Interesting.
So, yes, God gave us dominion over the planet.
Yeah.
God expects us to be stewards of that.
Of everything.
Yes. So, just like you wouldn't, is it something that you alone can fix? No, but we've got to be a team with it. Is it as bad as what they say? No, I don't believe it's that. But it definitely could be. And we need to be taking steps over the next couple generations to make sure that our planet is cared for future generations.
We'll have to have this conversation further.
Absolutely.
Some more of this because I'm interested in it. It affects us.
It does.
It affects our policies, and a lot of what's happening.
Should never been politicized.
Well, unfortunately, almost
everything is.
Yeah.
Everything today
unfortunately is. But now that's one thing I've how do they politicize the weather? The weather's the weather.
They found a way.
They found a way.
Yeah.
Ben Luna, everybody.
Jeff
Ben,
Hood.
thank you for being here.
Hey, wouldn't miss mornings in the hood.
We gotta do more. Okay,
hey.
We'll do it again.
All right. Good to see you.
God bless, buddy. We're behind. We're going to break into the programming as it exists. Okay.
Coming from all around the world, some of the countries we talked to there: Liberia, Congo, Senegal, Guinea, and it's coming as Tucson sector border agents are being warned to keep an eye out for fake